She's laughing at your jokes, answering all your questions, and it seems like she's into it. But then you text her later, and she ghosts you. What happened? Well, here's what happened. You had a nice conversation, and nice is the kiss of death. But I'm about to show you how to flip a dead, going nowhere conversation into something she's still thinking about 3 days later. And the best part? You're gonna do it by talking less, not more. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to make any boring conversation flirty using just 3 steps that feel effortless once you see them. I spent 2 years breaking down hundreds of real interactions to figure out why some conversations create attraction and others kill it. And what I found goes against everything you've been told. There's a moment in every conversation where things either spark or they die. Most guys can't see it coming, but once you know where it is, you'll never miss it again. I watched a guy named Marcus use this at a wedding once, and what happened still blows my mind. I'll tell you that story in a bit. Most conversations die in the first 3 minutes, and it's not because you're boring or because she's not interested, but because of something you do that feels completely normal in the moment. You don't even realize you're doing it, and by the time the conversation ends, she's already put you in a box you can't get out of. Let me show you what I mean. You're talking to a girl, could be anywhere. She mentions something about herself, maybe where she's from, what she does, something she likes, and your brain immediately goes into connection mode. You want to relate, you want to show her you're listening, you want to make her feel good, so you respond with agreement, with support, with validation. Oh, that's awesome. I love that too. That's really cool. Seems harmless, right? Seems like the right move. But here's what just happened. You gave her your approval before she did anything to earn it. And I know that sounds harsh, but think about it. Why would she need to impress you if you're already impressed? Why would she chase your attention if she already has it? She wouldn't, so she doesn't. And this keeps happening over and over throughout the conversation. She says something, you validate it. She says something else, you validate that too. And the whole time you're thinking you're building connection, but what you're really doing is eliminating tension. You're making everything too easy, too predictable, too safe. Now here's where it gets interesting, because there's a reason you do this, and it's not your fault. You've been trained your whole life to be agreeable, to make people comfortable, to show interest by affirming what they say. In most situations that works fine, but when you're trying to create attraction with a woman, it kills it. Because attraction doesn't live in agreement, it lives in tension, in uncertainty, in those moments where she's not quite sure if you're impressed with her or not. So the first step to making any conversation flirty is simple, but it goes against every instinct you have. Stop giving away your approval for free. Make her work for it. Not in a mean way, not by being cold or dismissive, but by creating just enough uncertainty that she actually has to try to win you over instead of the other way around. Now here's how that looks in real time. She tells you she's from Chicago. Instead of, oh cool, I love Chicago, you say something like Chicago. Are you one of those people who thinks deep dish is real pizza? Notice what just happened there. You didn't validate her. You didn't agree. You challenged her. Playfully, and now she has to defend herself. She has to qualify. She's invested, or she tells you what she does for work. Instead of, that's really interesting, you say, let me guess, you're the one in the office who always has to fix everyone else's mess. Now you're teasing, you're making an assumption, and she's either gonna laugh and correct you or lean into it. Either way, she's engaging. She's trying to show you who she actually is, instead of just answering questions. This is what Marcus did at that wedding I mentioned. He was talking to a bridesmaid. She told him she was a teacher, and instead of going, oh, that's great, I love teachers, he looked at her and said, elementary or high school? Because you've got that elementary teacher energy. She laughed, said high school, and immediately tried to defend why she didn't have elementary teacher energy. And just like that, she was chasing. He flipped the frame in one sentence. The conversation went from her answering his questions to her trying to prove something to him. And that shift is everything. Because once she's in that mode, once she's the one investing, the dynamic completely changes. She's not just being polite anymore. She's actually engaged. And that's when flirting starts to happen naturally. But here's what most guys get wrong when they try this. They think making her work for approval means being a jerk. So they go too far. They act like they're too good for her. And all that does is make them look insecure, like they're trying too hard to seem unimpressed. The key is to be playful, not mean. You're not tearing her down. You're just not building her up for no reason. You're creating a little friction, a little challenge, and doing it with a smile, with a vibe that says, I'm messing with you because I'm comfortable enough to mess with you. Think about it like this. When you meet someone and they immediately love everything about you, what happens? You don't respect their opinion because they didn't have any standards. They just liked you by default. But when someone makes you work a little, when they challenge you or tease you or make you qualify yourself, their approval actually means something. And that's what you're doing here. You're making your approval mean something by not giving it away so easily. And that's step one. Don't validate her so fast. Create a little push and pull. Make her earn your interest instead of handing it to her on a silver plate. But here's the thing. That alone isn't enough. Because if you just tease her and challenge her without ever pulling her back in, you're going to come across as combative, like you're just trying to one-up her the whole time. So you need step two, and this is where most guys completely drop the ball. You're 3 or 4 minutes into the conversation now. You've been playful, you've challenged her a bit, she's engaged, she's laughing. Congratulations, but now you hit a wall. Because you can only tease someone for so long before it starts to feel like you're just messing around with no real substance. And if she starts to feel like this conversation is all surface level banter with no depth, she's gonna lose interest fast. This is the moment where most guys panic. They feel the energy starting to dip, so they scramble to keep it going. They ask another question. They tell a story. They try to impress her with something cool about themselves, and all of that just brings the conversation right back to boring, right back to predictable. But here's what they're missing. The reason the energy is dipping isn't because the conversation needs more content. It's because it needs more connection. Real connection. Not the fake, we both like the same Netflix show connection. I'm talking about the kind of connection that makes her feel like you actually see her. Like you're paying attention to something deeper than just what she's saying. And this is where things get interesting. Because most guys think connection means asking deep questions, like, what's your passion? Or, what are you looking for in life? But that's not connection, that's just another interview question, and it makes the conversation feel heavy and forced. Real connection happens when you notice something about her that she didn't tell you, when you pick up on a vibe, a pattern, an energy, and you call it out. Not in a creepy way, but in a way that makes her think, wait, how did he catch that? Let me give you an example. You've been talking to this girl for a few minutes, she's been laughing at your jokes, playing along with your teasing, but you notice something. Every time you challenge her, she doubles down. She defends herself. She doesn't back down. So instead of just moving on to the next topic, you stop and say something like, you know what? You've got that competitive thing going on. I can tell you hate losing at anything. Now watch what happens. She either agrees and tells you a story that proves it, or she laughs and tries to deny it while proving your point. Either way, she feels seen. And that feeling is what creates real attraction, because you just showed her that you're not just going through the motions, you're actually paying attention. This is what separates flirting from small talk. Small talk is surface level, it's transactional. You say something, she responds, you move on. But flirting is observational. It's about catching the little things, the way she talks, the way she reacts, the way she carries herself, and then reflecting it back to her in a way that feels playful and accurate at the same time. I learned this from a guy I used to work with named James. He wasn't particularly good-looking, wasn't rich, wasn't even that funny, but women were drawn to him, and I couldn't figure out why until I actually listened to how he talked to them. He would spend the first few minutes being playful and light, then out of nowhere he dropped this perfectly timed observation about who they were, and every single time the girl would stop, look at him different, and lean in. I watched him do this at a bar once with a girl who seemed completely uninterested at first. She was giving short answers, checking her phone, the usual signs of someone who's just being polite, but James didn't push harder. He didn't try to entertain her more, he just watched. And after maybe 2 minutes, he said, "You're one of those people who says yes to everything, then regrets it later, aren't you?" She stopped, looked at him, and laughed. Not a polite laugh, a real one. And she said, "How did you know that?" And just like that, the entire energy shifted. She put her phone down, she leaned in, and for the next 20 minutes she was locked in, because he made her feel like he actually got her, like he saw something in her that most people miss. But that's the power of observation. It cuts through all the surface level stuff and creates a moment of real connection. And the crazy part, you don't have to be right. You just have to be confident enough to make the call. Because even if you're wrong, the fact that you were bold enough to say it out loud makes you interesting. It shows you're not afraid to take a risk. And women respect that way more than they respect playing it safe. So step 2 is this. Make an observation about who she is, not just what she's saying. Pay attention to how she talks, how she reacts, what she emphasizes. Then call it out in a way that feels playful but real. Something like, "You strike me as someone who plans everything," or "I bet you're the friend everyone calls when they need advice," or "You've got that energy like you're always 3 steps ahead of everyone else." The key is to make it specific enough that it feels personal, but broad enough that you're not just guessing wildly. And when you land it right, when she feels like you actually see something real about her, the conversation stops being small talk and starts being something she'll remember. But here's where most guys stop. They get the playful teasing down, they throw in a solid observation, and they think that's enough. So they just keep cycling between those two things for the rest of the conversation. Tease a little, observe a little, repeat. And while that's better than interview mode, it's still missing the final piece. The piece that actually makes a conversation flirty instead of just interesting. Because here's the truth. You can be playful, you can be observant, but if you never create any real tension, if you never make her wonder what you're actually thinking, the conversation stays friendly. It stays surface level. And friendly doesn't lead anywhere. Friendly gets you the nice talking to you and a handshake goodbye. So, what's the difference between a conversation that's interesting and a conversation that's actually flirty? It's this. Flirty conversations have stakes. There's something on the line. There's a feeling in the air that something could happen. That this isn't just 2 people passing time. It's 2 people testing each other, seeing if there's something real there. And that feeling doesn't come from what you say, it comes from what you don't say. It comes from the pauses, the looks, the moments where you let the silence sit just a little longer than feels comfortable. The moments where you're not rushing to fill the space or make her feel at ease. Most guys are terrified of silence. So the second there's a lull, they jump in with another question, or another joke, or another story. And every time they do that, they kill the tension, because tension lives in the gaps. In those moments where she's not sure what you're thinking or what's coming next. Where she has to sit with the uncertainty instead of being rescued from it. Think about the last time you felt real chemistry with someone. I bet there were moments where neither of you were talking, where you were just looking at each other, and it felt charged, like something was about to happen. That's tension, and you can't create that if you're constantly feeling every second with words. So here's step 3, and this is the one that separates guys who have nice conversations from guys who create actual attraction. Let the silence breathe. Don't be afraid of the pause. When you make an observation or say something playful, don't immediately follow it up with another sentence. Let it land. Let her sit with it. Let the moment stretch just long enough that it feels like something. Here's what that looks like. You've been talking for a bit. You tease her about something. She laughs, and instead of jumping right into the next thing, you just look at her, hold eye contact for a beat longer than normal. Smile slightly, then let her be the one to fill the silence. 9 times out of 10, she will. She'll say something, she'll laugh nervously, she'll ask you a question, and when she does, you just shifted the power dynamic again, because now she's the one working to keep the conversation going. She's the one feeling the need to fill the space. And that's when things get flirty. I saw this play out perfectly at a house party last year. There was this guy talking to a girl by the kitchen. He said something that made her laugh, then just stopped. Didn't say anything else, just looked at her with this slight smirk. And you could see her processing it. She tucked her hair behind her ear, looked down, then looked back up at him and said, "What?" with this smile on her face. And he just shrugged and said, "Nothing. You're just fun to mess with." That 5-second pause did more for that interaction than anything he could have said, because it created uncertainty. She didn't know what he was thinking. She didn't know if he was into her or just playing around. And that uncertainty made her want to figure it out. Made her invest more, made her chase. But here's the mistake guys make when they try this. They think letting silence breathe means going completely quiet and cold, so they overdo it. They pause for way too long. They break eye contact and stare off into space. They make it awkward instead of charged, and the girl just thinks they ran out of things to say. The pause only works if you're still present, if you're still engaged, if you're holding eye contact or smiling slightly or giving off the vibe that you're comfortable in the silence, because the silence isn't about ignoring her. It's about letting the tension sit instead of dissolving it immediately. Think of it like this. When you watch a good movie, the best scenes aren't the ones where people are talking nonstop. They're the ones where nothing's being said, but everything's being communicated. The look between two characters, the pause before someone makes a decision. That's where the emotion lives. And that's what you're creating here. A moment where the vibe says more than the words. So you tease her, you make an observation, then you let it breathe. You don't rush to the next thing. You don't over-explain. You just let the moment exist. And in that gap, that's where she starts to feel something. That's where the conversation stops being just friendly and starts feeling like something more. But here's what ties all three steps together, because these aren't three separate techniques you rotate through, they're three parts of the same flow. You start by not validating her too fast. That creates the challenge. Then you make an observation about who she is. That creates the connection. Then you let the silence breathe. That creates detention. And when you cycle through those three things naturally, without forcing it, the conversation becomes flirty without you even trying. Because it's not about memorizing lines or about having perfect timing. It's about understanding the structure underneath every flirty conversation. Challenge, connection, tension, push, pull, pause. And once you feel that structure, once you feel how it works, you can apply it to any conversation with any woman in any situation. I tested this myself for 2 months straight. Every time I talked to a woman, I made sure I hit all three. I didn't validate her right away. I made at least one solid observation about who she was, and I let at least 1 or 2 pauses sit longer than felt comfortable. And the difference was night and day. Conversations that used to fizzle out after 5 minutes were turning into 20, 30-minute interactions where she was the one trying to keep it going. Numbers I got actually responded. Dates actually led somewhere. And the wildest part? It didn't feel like work. It felt natural. Because I wasn't trying to perform or impress or say the perfect thing. I was just creating space for attraction to happen instead of accidentally killing it like I used to. You don't need to be the funniest guy in the room. You don't need to have the best stories or the most interesting life. You just need to understand how attraction actually builds in a conversation. And it's not through agreement. It's not through constant talking. It's through challenge, connection, and tension. That's it. That's the formula. So next time you're talking to a woman and the conversation starts to feel flat, don't panic. Don't try to fix it by talking more or asking more questions. Just remember these 3 steps. Stop validating her so fast. Make an observation about who she really is and let the silence breathe. Do that, and you'll turn boring conversations into flirty ones without even thinking about it. You don't get attraction by playing it safe. You get it by being willing to create a little uncertainty, a little friction, a little space for her to wonder about you, instead of having you all figured out in the first 5 minutes.